"You're dead weight," my 15-year-old son said before walking out with his mother, leaving me flat on my back with a herniated spine and unpaid bills. Yesterday, that same son, now 31, sat in my lawyer's office demanding half of everything my sister-in-law left me. He brought legal documents, a rehearsed speech about family rights, and a stepfather who'd turned inheritance fraud into an art form. What he didn't bring was any awareness that the woman who raised me from nothing had spent her final years documenting every lie they'd ever told. I'm curious, what's the first thought that comes to your mind after hearing this? Comment below and let me know. I smelled lemon oil before I saw the desk. Lillian loved brass and order. Lillian Hart was my late sister-in-law, my ex-wife's younger sister, and she ran her life like a ledger where every line balanced. I lowered myself into the leather chair the way my back allows. Slow, careful. Avery Cole cleared his throat. Avery is Lillian's estate attorney, the kind you trust with keys and secrets. "We're here to execute the last will and testament of Lillian Hart," he said, opening a navy folder. "First," Avery read, "to Owen Brooks, I leave the Victorian house at 47 Hawthorne in Salem, with all furnishings and antiques. My controlling interest in Hart Hospitality, a coastal inn brand with 2 rental properties, related cash and investment accounts, and trusteeship over restoration, scholarship, and operations trusts. Owen will serve as trustee." My fingers tightened on the chair arms. I kept my eyes on the brass lamp so they wouldn't drift to the door. It opened anyway. Footsteps. The room changed temperature. Jake walked in first. Jake is my estranged son. He left with his mother when he was 15. He didn't sit. "We aren't late, are we?" His voice was colder than the mantel clock. Laura Bennett followed. Laura is my ex-wife and Jake's mother. A tight smile, a pearl necklace that begged for sympathy. Behind her came Marco Lane. Marco is Laura's partner, a smooth talker who brings trouble like rain brings leaks. He nodded at me like we were old friends. We are not. Avery didn't flinch. "Please, take a seat. We're underway." He continued, steady. "There are modest bequests to long-standing staff." He glanced toward the window. Mrs. Green sat there, hands on her purse. Mrs. Green is Lillian's housekeeper of 20 years, steady as the grandfather clock. "And," Avery said, "there is a no-contest clause. If any party challenges these provisions, any bequest to them is forfeited and redirected to the named foundation." Marco's smile sharpened. "Our interest is simple honor commitments. Lillian was a fair woman." Laura leaned forward. "Owen always said he would share, back when things were hard." Jake looked me over like a contractor judging a sagging beam. "You told us that if you got back on your feet, you'd make it right." "Looks like your feet did more than get back." The ache ran down my leg. I sat taller anyway. "I don't remember promising you anything," I said. Jake laughed once. "You don't remember much, except how to play the victim." Avery kept it neutral. "If there is any written agreement, we'll need the original. No scans, no photos, chain of custody intact." Mrs. Green spoke so softly we all heard it. "What's yours is what you worked for." Silence settled like glass. Laura tried a new angle. "He can't handle all of this. He has a condition." "Spine?" I said. "Yes, I have one." Something flickered in Jake. Then he smirked. "Lillian wasn't even your aunt. She was ours." "She was my sister," Laura added quickly, fastening the moment like a button. "And she knew who showed up," I said. Avery closed the folder. "We'll circulate copies. If you intend to submit documents, coordinate with my office. Originals only." Marco slid his phone out, casual as a yawn. "In fact, we already have something you should see." He tilted the screen toward me for a heartbeat. White paper, my name, neat lines that looked almost like my handwriting. Almost. The photo was cropped tight. "The edge is too clean." Jake watched my face for a flinch. "Remember now?" I didn't blink. Avery held out his hand. "Originals," he said again. Marco's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Tomorrow," he said. I took the hallway slow, counting the steps my back would tolerate. The elevator doors mirrored my face into 4 tired versions. Avery matched my pace. Estate attorney or not, he moves like someone who has carried families through storms. "We're not reacting," he said. "We're setting terms. Originals only, chain of custody intact." "Tomorrow?" I asked. "Tomorrow," he said. 10 a.m. I'll have a forensic document examiner in the room. If they refuse, that tells the story. If they comply, that tells a better one." We stopped by the reception desk. The brass plaque with Lillian's name caught the light. "She planned for this, Owen," Avery added, softer. "No contest wasn't bravado. It was a gate." My phone buzzed. "Zoe," I said, answering. "Zoe Brooks is my cousin and our communications manager at Heart Hospitality. Calm voice, sharp instincts. She handles fires before the rest of us smell smoke." "I'm seeing chatter," she said without hello. "A blogger posted, 'Son fights for fair share after unfair will.' They're teasing a promise letter, anonymous source." "Hold statement?" I asked. I drafted one. Paper rustled on her end. "We honor Lillian Hart's wishes and trust, and all legal matters are handled by counsel. No further comment at this time." "Run it," I said, "and tighten access to our media inbox. Whitelist press we trust. Everything else parks in a queue." "On it. Also, a freelancer asked if you're fit to manage the brand due to a medical condition." I looked at the elevator floor numbers counting down. "My spine isn't their story," I said. "If we must answer, use operational leadership remains stable under a defined governance plan. No medical talk." "Copy," she said. "And Owen, I'm proud of you." The call ended. Avery watched me slide the phone away. "Who was that?" "Zoe, cousin, our communications lead." I exhaled. "They're already selling a narrative." "Then we buy time with facts," he said. He handed me a thin folder. "Inspection protocol. We'll log receipt, seal, and chain. You'll be present. Don't engage them outside counsel, not even by text." We reached the street. Boston wind moved through the trees like a choir clearing throats. I pulled my coat close and looked up at a sky the color of pewter. Lillian liked days like this.
"Weather keeps the unnecessary people home," she'd say. "It helps you hear what matters." I remembered the way she would line up invoices on that long table, tapping the corner of each stack until the edges registered as one. Audit everything. People, too. Not to judge, just to know what you're holding. Back at the car, I sat sideways first, then swung my legs, the ritual that spares my back. The seat clicked into place. My phone buzzed again. Avery this time. Calendar invite. Subject, document inspection, promise letter. Location, Cole and Hart. Conference B. Time, tomorrow, 10 a.m. Note, originals only. Evidence bag on arrival. Examiner present. A second email followed. Attachment, no contest advisory to opposing counsel. Avery's message was plain. Sent. Delivered. Read. I stared at the word read until the green turned into a dull dot. If they have an original, we'll know what it isn't. If they don't, they'll tell on themselves trying to act like they do. A bus hissed to a stop up the block. Somewhere, a siren rose then fell. I closed my eyes and pictured Lillian's hands in work gloves, resetting a crooked frame until it squared to true. "Tomorrow," I said to no one, and to her, "bring your original." The day my back gave out, the air smelled like pine sap and hot metal. We were unloading a pallet of trim cheap strapping, cheaper decisions. The strap snapped. Instinct made me twist and catch. Something bright popped low in my spine, and my left leg turned to electricity. The floor rose slow. Forklift beeps smeared into one long note. "Don't move," Rick shouted. Rick is my foreman, good in a crisis, louder than he needs to be when he's scared. I watched dust float in the warehouse light and tried to breathe around the pain. 2 days later, I sat in a calm white room with Dr. Patel. Dr. Patel is my spine specialist, measured voice, steady hands when news is hard. He pointed at the scan.
Herniated disc at L4, L5. Nerve compression. We manage, we don't cure. No lifting over 15 pounds. No twisting, no prolonged standing. How long? I asked. As long as it takes to keep you functional, he said. Physical therapy, pain management, you'll need to pace everything. Work called it light-duty unavailability, which sounds merciful until the check's thin. I learned which stairs squeaked in our apartment because I took them slow enough to hear it. Sitting hurt different than standing. Sleep was a negotiation. Laura picked up extra shifts. Laura Bennett was my wife, then Jake's mother. She came home with fryer oil in her hair and exhaustion sharp on her tongue. "We can't live like this," she said, staring at the red numbers. "We just can't." "I'll find a desk job," I said, "something that lets me sit." "Does sitting even help?" she asked, not unkindly, just tired. Lillian showed up with grocery bags and a clipboard. Lillian Hart, Laura's younger sister. My sister-in-law hated chaos more than rain on a wedding day. "We're auditing expenses," she said, pen already ticking. "Not to judge, to know." Line by line, she called, cut, rearranged. She left with a plan and came back with a used lumbar cushion and 3 PT referrals. "Let me help at the ends," I told her a month later, fear of being useless pressing on my ribs. "Inventory, scheduling, something slow." "You can't lift," she said. "I can count," I said. Her smile didn't soften, but her eyes did. "Then count." I started in the back rooms tracking linens, digitizing binders that smelled like ocean and mildew. Work that didn't punish my spine and did soothe my pride. When storms hit, Lillian worked beside me, gloved and focused, making crooked things square. "Audit everything," she would say. "People too. Not to judge, just to know what you're holding." That's when Marco arrived. "A friend from the gym," Laura said, opening the door wider than we could afford to heat the room. Marco Lane, dressed like a billboard for easy answers. Flashy watch, smile that never landed. "He's got connections," she said, "opportunities out west." Marco looked around our small place, then shook my hand like mine needed fixing. "Tough break, man," he said. "Some environments are toxic. Kids shouldn't have to marinate in that." Kid was Jake, 15, hoodie, earbuds, a growth spurt that made his jeans look borrowed. He watched Marco the way boys watch power they don't yet understand. I tried to catch his eye and got my reflection in the dark window instead. We ate cheap pizza while Marco told stories about desert skylines and second chances. He talked like the hero of all of them. After he left, Laura's voice was lighter. "It would be a fresh start," she said. "For all of us." "For all of us," I repeated, because sometimes you repeat a line hoping it becomes true. Weeks passed. PT helped in inches. Bills moved in feet. Jake stopped asking me to shoot hoops and started staying late at study group. One night he came home early, eyes clear in a way that made me afraid. "Dad," he said, already standing like he was on the other side of the door, "I can't keep doing this." "What is this?" I asked. "Watching you hurt and Mom drown," he swallowed. "Marco says Arizona schools are good. Mom says we can't wait forever for you to get better. I'm going with her." He lifted a duffel I hadn't seen him pack. His hand closed around the doorknob. The rain turned streetlights into soft blurs. Boxes sat stacked against the wall like tired soldiers. Jake stood by the door with his duffel bag, ready to walk out of my life. "Don't do this," I said, keeping my voice steady. My back ached, but that pain felt small compared to what was happening in this room. Laura folded clothes into a bag without looking at me. "He needs better schools," she said. "Arizona has opportunities. We can't stay stuck here forever." "You mean you've been planning this with Marco?" "Marco actually listens to me," she shot back. Jake's face was stone. "He says real men don't lie around while their wives work 2 jobs. "I do work," I said, "just differently now." Jake made a sound like a laugh, but colder. "You call sitting at a desk counting towels work? It pays the rent that doesn't pay itself." He stared past me like I wasn't even there. "I can't stay in this mess anymore," he said, and the way he said mess felt like a slap. The lamp buzzed, the heater kicked on. Normal sounds in a room where nothing felt normal anymore. "I'm 15, Jake continued, "old enough to choose where I want to live." "Mom said so." Laura finally looked at me. Her eyes weren't angry, they were tired, in a way that went deeper than working double shifts. "He needs stability, Owen, a future he can count on." "What about what I need?" I asked. She sighed. "You know, Lillian and I have been sisters our whole lives. She kept her married name when she divorced Hart. I kept Dad's name, Bennett. People hold on to what keeps them steady." She glanced at Jake. "He needs something steady to hold on to." "He has me," I said, but the words sounded weak even to myself. Jake shifted the bag on his shoulder. "You're dead weight," he said, not shouting, just stating it like a fact. "Mom can't carry both of us." The words hit me like a physical blow. I breathed the way Dr. Patel taught me, slow and controlled. "I'm getting better every day," I said. Jake shook his head like he was brushing off a fly. "That's not a real plan, Dad." "Jake," I said, and his name caught in my throat. He reached for the door handle. 3 sharp knocks interrupted us. Lillian's voice came through the door. "It's me." Lillian Hart is Laura's younger sister, the one who shows up with solutions when everyone else just has problems. Laura opened the door. "We're leaving tonight," she announced, like she was giving a weather report. Lillian stepped inside and looked around the room, the boxes, the boy ready to run, the man trying to stand straight despite everything falling apart. "Change of plans?" she asked, calm as always. "We're staying at Marco's tonight," Laura said, "then driving to Arizona tomorrow." Jake's hand tightened on the door handle. Lillian walked over and put her hand on my shoulder. Her touch was cool from the rain, but steady in a way that made me feel less alone. "We'll figure this out later," she said quietly, just for me. "Right now, just breathe." I looked at Jake's white knuckles on the brass handle. "Son," I said one more time. He turned the handle. The door swung open to the dark hallway, where wet footprints from other people's lives marked the carpet. 6 months after they left, I learned that silence has different weights. The apartment felt hollow, like an empty can. I kept Jake's room exactly as he'd left it, unmade bed, posters of basketball players he'd never be tall enough to match, a desk covered in pencil shavings and old homework. Lillian found me there on a Tuesday, sitting on his bed, holding a report card from 2 years back. All B's and 1 A- in English. "He was smart," I said. "Intelligence doesn't guarantee wisdom," she replied, setting a manila folder on the nightstand. "I have a proposition." I looked up. Lillian never used 10 words when 5 would work, and she never made propositions unless she'd already done the math. "The Salem house needs work," she said. "Not heavy lifting, inventory, scheduling, coordinating with contractors. You can sit for most of it. The pay covers what you need, plus health insurance." The Salem house was her Victorian mansion on Hawthorne Street, 3 stories of gingerbread trim and stained glass that she'd been restoring for years. I'd helped her move furniture there once, back when my spine could handle it. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you show up," she said, simply. "And because you understand that broken things can still be useful if you're careful with them." I folded Jake's report card and set it in the drawer where it belonged. "When do I start?" "Yesterday would have been ideal," she said, almost smiling. "Monday will suffice." The work was different from the warehouse, but work nonetheless. I cataloged antique furniture, tracked delivery schedules, and managed the small army of craftsmen who moved through the house like careful surgeons. Lillian worked beside me most days, wearing canvas gloves and carrying a clipboard that never left her side. "Audit everything," she'd say, tapping her pen against the metal clip. "Not to judge, just to know what you're holding." She applied this philosophy to more than furniture. When the electrician quoted double the written estimate, she produced the original paperwork and a recording of their phone conversation. When the tile contractor tried to use cheaper materials, she showed him photos of the samples he'd promised. "People tell you who they are," she explained one afternoon as we reviewed invoices. "You just have to listen carefully." Mrs. Green brought us lunch most days. Miss Green is Lillian's housekeeper, a woman who speaks softly but notices everything. She'd worked for Lillian since the house was just an idea, and she treated it like a living thing that needed tending. "The restoration is coming along beautifully," she said one afternoon, setting down sandwiches. "Miss Lillian always said this house would find its purpose again." I nodded, looking around at the slowly emerging beauty. Each room was becoming a small victory, proof that patient work could restore what time had worn down. The house revealed itself under our attention. Hardwood floors emerged from beneath old carpet. Windows cleared to show gardens that had been growing wild for decades. Lillian documented everything with photographs, creating a timeline of progress that satisfied her need for order. One evening, as we locked up for the day, Lillian handed me a set of keys. "What are these?" I asked. "Safe deposit box," she said. "Downtown branch. If anything happens to me, you'll need access." "Nothing's going to happen to you," I said. She looked at me with the same expression she used when reviewing contracts. Kind, but realistic. "Something happens to everyone, Owen. The question is whether you're prepared for it." She walked to her car, then turned back. "Oh, and I've spoken with Avery Cole about updating some legal documents. He'll want to meet with you next week." "What kind of documents?" "The kind that make sure the people who show up are the ones who benefit," she said, getting into her car. "Audit everything, remember?" 2 years into the restoration, Lillian started carrying a different kind of clipboard. This one held doctor's appointments instead of contractor schedules. She couldn't hide the yellow tinge in her eyes, no matter how many reading glasses she wore. "Pancreatic cancer," she said one Tuesday, as casual as discussing paint samples. "Stage 3, maybe 4. Doctors won't commit to timelines." I set down my inventory sheet. "What does that mean?" "It means we work faster," she said, flipping through her papers. "Zoe needs more responsibility. You need to understand the whole business, not just the restoration side." Zoe Brooks is Lillian's niece. She's been handling marketing for Heart Hospitality from her Cambridge apartment, turning our small coastal brand into something people actually seek out. Sharp like her aunt, but with a warmer smile. "How long do we have?" I asked. Lillian looked at me over her glasses. "Long enough to finish what we started, not long enough to waste time feeling sorry for ourselves." But the weight of it showed anyway. She worked longer hours, as if she could outrun what was growing inside her. I found her reviewing trust documents with Avery at 7 in the morning. I found her teaching me profit and loss statements at 9 at night. "Business runs on relationships," she explained, pointing to columns of numbers. "Repeat guests, loyal staff, vendors who keep their word. Money follows trust, not the other way around." That fall, Jonah Park joined us. Jonah is our new Chief Operating Officer, steady under pressure, good with the details that matter. He'd run boutique hotels in Vermont before Lillian convinced him that coastal Maine needed his expertise. "Your aunt believes in succession planning," he told me during his first week. "She wants continuity, not chaos when the time comes." The treatments took more from her than she admitted. Some days her hands shook when she signed papers. Some days she sat during meetings instead of pacing. But she never missed a day, never delegated the big decisions. "I'm not training you to replace me," she said one afternoon as we reviewed budgets. "I'm training you to continue what I started. There's a difference." The house was nearly finished by then. Rooms that had been storage now gleamed with restored moldings and period fixtures. The kitchen could handle dinner parties. The library actually held books instead of boxes. "It's beautiful," I said, standing in the front parlor where afternoon light made everything glow. "It's functional," she corrected, but she was smiling. "Beauty happens when things work the way they're supposed to." That evening, she called me into the study. A thick folder sat on her desk, bound with a rubber band. "Media coverage," she said, sliding it toward me. "Local papers are noticing the restoration. Food bloggers are writing about the inn. Zoe's been fielding interview requests." I opened it. Headlines like "Historic Salem Mansion Returns to Glory" and "Heart Hospitality, Small Brand, Big Impact." Photos showing the house's transformation. A timeline that looked like visible progress. "Why show me this?" I asked. "Because success attracts attention," she said, "and attention attracts people who think they deserve a piece of what you've built."
She suddenly looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the late hour.
When I'm gone, they'll come. Who? People who think blood matters more than work. People who mistake showing up for showing out. She pulled another document from her desk drawer. That's why we're taking precautions. The header read, Amendment to Trust Structure in Avery's precise typing. What kind of precautions? I asked. Her smile was sharp as a blade. The kind that makes sure the people who earn something are the ones who keep it. That was 3 weeks ago. Now I sat in Avery's conference room, staring at the phone Marco had flashed like a winning lottery ticket. The promise letter glowed on his screen for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to plant doubt, too brief to examine. They're bluffing, Zoe said, setting her laptop on the polished table. Zoe had driven down from Cambridge the moment I called, her PR instincts already in overdrive. The timing is too convenient. Lillian dies, Will gets read, suddenly they have a smoking gun? Avery spread 3 manila folders across the table like a dealer laying cards. We requested the original this morning. Their response was creative. He slid a printed email toward me. The subject line read, Document Authentication Concerns. I read aloud, Our client is concerned about potential tampering with original documents given the adversarial nature of recent proceedings. We propose neutral examination by a court-appointed expert. Translation? I asked. They don't have an original, Zoe said, not looking up from her screen. They're buying time to make one. Avery nodded. The metadata from that phone photo will tell us everything we need to know. Creation date, device information, editing history. If it's real, the data will confirm it. If it's fake... The no contest clause kicks in, I finished. Exactly. Avery opened the first folder. But Lillian prepared for this scenario. She documented everything, your work hours, your contributions to the restoration, even your assistance during her medical appointments. He showed me a thick stack of photographs. Me carrying paint samples, me measuring windows, me sitting beside Lillian's hospital bed, laptop balanced on my knees as we reviewed quarterly reports. She kept a journal too, he continued, opening the second folder. Pages of Lillian's neat handwriting filled clear plastic sleeves. Daily entries about the business, the restoration, and your involvement. Very detailed, very consistent. The third folder was thickest. Financial records, Avery explained. Every payment you received, every hour you worked, every decision you helped make. It builds a picture of someone who earned what they inherited. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Dad, we need to talk before lawyers make this worse. Just the two of us. Jay. I showed it to Avery. He frowned. Don't respond. Not yet. Why not? Because 16 years of silence followed by a text message isn't reconciliation, he said. It's strategy. Zoe looked up from her laptop. The blogger who posted about the unfair will just updated his story. New headline, Disabled Man Inherits Fortune While Family Struggles. Anonymous source provided details about your injury, your work situation, even Jake's age when he left. The room felt smaller suddenly. They're building a narrative, I said. We're building a better one, Avery replied, closing the folders. Truth has better documentation. Marco's voice crackled through the phone like static electricity. We're not comfortable handing over the original without proper security measures, he said. Too much risk of tampering. I gripped the receiver tighter. Avery requested it this morning. Either you have an original or you don't. We have it, Laura's voice cut in. She was on speaker. But we need guarantees about chain of custody, neutral examination. You need to follow the legal process, I interrupted. Originals only. That was the agreement. Marco's laugh was sharp. Agreements work both ways, Owen. Maybe it's time you honored some of the ones you made years ago. I hung up. The silence in Lillian's study felt heavy. Her desk still held the brass letter opener she'd used to slice through contracts and lies. Her handwriting covered sticky notes attached to various documents, reminders, calculations, warnings. 20 minutes later, the phone rang again. Unknown number.
"Mr. Brooks, this is Sandra Kelly. I used to work at First National Bank downtown." The voice was older, female, nervous. "I saw the news about Lillian Hart's will, and I think you should know, your ex-wife and her partner came to the bank several times over the years, always asking very specific questions about estate planning, inheritance law." My spine straightened. "When?" "First time was maybe 5 years ago, then 3 years back, most recently about 8 months ago. Mr. Brooks, they weren't asking general questions. They knew details about your situation, about Lillian's business, details they shouldn't have known." "What kind of details?" "Property values, business revenue, even medical information about your injury." Marco took extensive notes every time. After she hung up, I sat staring at Lillian's organized chaos. Her filing system was precise. Everything had a place, a purpose. Then I noticed a sticky note I'd missed. D, check blue ledger if problems arise. Bottom drawer, left side. L. I'd never seen a blue ledger. The bottom drawer held hanging folders by color, green for financial, yellow for legal, red for personal. But wedged behind the red files was a slim blue notebook. Tonight, I decided. Tonight, I'd see what Lillian had been preparing for.
The diner smelled like coffee and regret. Laura sat in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a mug like it was the only thing keeping her steady. She looked older than I remembered, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there when she left, gray threads in her hair that caught the morning light. I slid into the seat across from her, keeping my back straight against the vinyl. "You wanted to talk?" She nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Marco doesn't know I'm here." "That's a start." "Owen, I need you to understand something." She finally looked up. "When we left, I thought we were doing the right thing. You were hurt, we were broke, and Marco offered us a way out. By abandoning me. By giving Jake a chance at something better." Her voice cracked slightly. "But it wasn't better. Arizona was... Marco had debts, gambling debts. The opportunities he promised never materialized." I waited. The blue ledger had taught me that silence often revealed more than questions. "We moved 6 times in 2 years," she continued. "Different apartments, different schools for Jake. Marco always had an explanation. Better neighborhood, better job prospects. I didn't realize we were running from people he owed money to." "When did you realize?" "When the men came to our door looking for him." She shuddered. "They were polite, but scary. They asked about assets, about family with money. That's when Marco started asking about Lillian." My coffee grew cold as she talked. "He researched her?" "Obsessively. Her business, her properties, her relationship with you. He found out about your work at the restoration, your involvement in the company. He said families like ours deserved a piece of what we'd helped build." "What we'd helped build?" I kept my voice level. "Laura, you left." "I know." Tears started then, quiet and steady. "I know what we did, what I did. But Marco convinced me that Lillian owed us something, that she'd stolen you away from your real family. She gave me work when I couldn't work. She gave me purpose when I felt useless." Laura nodded miserably. "I see that now. But Marco, he has a way of making his version of things sound reasonable. He showed me articles about inheritance law, about family rights. He said we could get enough to pay off his debts and start fresh." "The promise letter," I said. She flinched. "He made that on his computer. He practiced your signature for weeks using old birthday cards Jake had saved." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper. "This is the original, the real one." I unfolded it carefully. It was a birthday card from Jake's 13th birthday. "Happy birthday, son," in my handwriting, along with a short note about being proud of him. Below my signature, someone had traced the letters in pencil, practicing the curves and angles. "He's done this before, hasn't he?" I asked. Laura's silence was answer enough. "The bank employee who called me, Sandra Kelly, she said you'd been asking questions for years." "Marco's idea. He said we needed to understand our options, our rights." She wiped her eyes with a paper napkin. "I was so tired, Owen. Tired of moving, tired of looking over our shoulders, tired of Jake asking why his father never called. I didn't have your number." "I know. Marco said it was better that way. Clean breaks heal faster." She laughed bitterly. "Nothing about this has been clean." The waitress refilled our coffee cups, giving us a moment of ordinary silence in an extraordinary conversation. "What do you want from me, Laura?" "I want to stop this before it goes too far, before Jake gets hurt worse than he already has been." She pulled out her phone. "Marco's been coaching him, telling him you owe us, that Lillian stole what should have been ours. Jake believes it because he needs to believe it. It's easier than admitting we made a mistake." "And what do you believe?" She looked out the window at the parking lot where her rental car sat next to my old Honda. "I believe I chose wrong 16 years ago. And I believe Marco is going to destroy what's left of my relationship with my son if I don't do something to stop it." Avery's conference table looked like a war room. Documents spread in neat stacks, each labeled with colored tabs. A laptop displayed forensic software that could dissect digital files down to their creation timestamps. "We go methodical," Avery said, adjusting his glasses. "First, we let them present their evidence. Then we dismantle it piece by piece." He pointed to the first stack. "Metadata analysis shows their photo was taken 4 days ago, not years back. The font is Times New Roman. Default setting, Lillian always used Garamond for personal correspondence." Zoe pulled up side-by-side images on her laptop. "The paper grain is wrong too. Modern laser printer stock versus the linen stationery Lillian preferred." "Then we moved to the ledger," Avery continued, tapping the blue notebook. "Marco's criminal history in Nevada and Oregon. Same pattern. Target recent widows, forge documents, claim family inheritance rights." I flipped through the private investigator's report Avery had commissioned that morning. 3 successful cons, 2 near misses where the families fought back. Always the same approach: estranged relative suddenly appears with proof of promised inheritance. "The audio recordings are our nuclear option," Avery said, sliding the small digital recorder across the table. "Lillian documented every extortion attempt. Marco's voice is clear on all of them." My phone buzzed. Text message from Jake. "Dad, we can settle this without lawyers destroying everyone. You owe me more than money. You owe me the truth about why you let us go." I showed it to Avery. His expression hardened. "Emotional manipulation. Classic technique. They're trying to bypass legal process with guilt." Should I respond? Absolutely not. Any communication gives them ammunition. He gathered the documents into precise stacks. "Tomorrow, we let the evidence speak." Zoe closed her laptop. "The media narrative is shifting in our favor. 3 more outlets picked up the story about Marco's criminal background. Public opinion matters in cases like this." "What's our timeline?" I asked. "Mediation starts at 10. We let them present first. Always let the liar commit to their story before you show the truth." Avery's smile was sharp as a blade. "By noon, this will be over." The mediation room smelled like stale coffee and nervous sweat. A court reporter sat ready, fingers poised over her machine. Jake wore a suit that looked borrowed, his jaw set in the stubborn line I remembered from his teenage years. Laura fidgeted with her purse strap. Marco lounged in his chair like he owned the building. "We appreciate everyone coming together," the mediator began. "Mr. Lane, you requested this session to present new evidence?" Marco straightened his tie. "That's right. We have documentation that changes everything." He slid a manila envelope across the table. "A promise letter from Owen to his family, written during his recovery period." Avery opened the envelope with surgical precision. Inside was a crisp sheet of paper, perfectly formatted, with what looked like my signature at the bottom. "This letter," Marco continued, "clearly states Owen's intention to share any inheritance from Lillian Hart with his estranged family. It's dated 3 years ago, witnessed, and notarized." Jake leaned forward. "You wrote this when you thought you might die from the pain medication. You said you didn't want us left with nothing." I stared at the letter. The words were convincing, the sentiment plausible. If I hadn't seen the blue ledger, I might have doubted my own memory. Avery placed the letter under a magnifying glass. Interesting document. May I ask where the original has been stored for 3 years? Safe deposit box, Laura said quickly. We kept it secure. Which bank? Marco's smile flickered. Does it matter? The document speaks for itself. Actually, it does. Avery pulled out a laptop and connected it to a portable scanner. This paper was manufactured in 2024. The metadata from your phone photo shows it was created 4 days ago using Microsoft Word's default template. He turned the screen toward them. Lines of code filled the display, showing creation dates, edit times, device information. Furthermore, Avery continued, the signature was traced from a birthday card. We have the original, provided by Mrs. Bennett this morning. Laura's face went pale. Marco's jaw tightened, but he didn't back down. Metadata can be manipulated, Marco said. Any computer expert will tell you that. Perhaps, but handwriting analysis is harder to fake. Avery produced another document. This is a certified comparison between the signature on your letter and Owen's actual writing samples. The pressure points are wrong, the pen angle is inconsistent, and there are trace marks from pencil guidelines. Jake's confidence wavered. That doesn't prove anything. Maybe the analysis is wrong. Then let's move to the blue ledger, Avery said, opening Lillian's notebook. The one that documents every extortion attempt your stepfather has made over the past 5 years. Avery opened the blue ledger like a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury. The pages crackled in the silent room. Let's start with the financial records, he said, placing a bank statement on the table. March 15, 2019. Wire transfer from Lillian Hart to Laura Bennett. $5,000. Memo line reads, final payment, no further contact. Laura's hands trembled. That was for Jake's school expenses. Was it? Avery flipped to another page. Because according to Lillian's journal, you called claiming Jake needed emergency dental work, but the school records show he never missed a day for medical appointments. He placed another statement down. June 3, 2020. Another wire transfer. $7,000. This time the memo reads, last time documented for legal purposes. Marco shifted in his chair. Lillian offered to help. We didn't force her. Actually, you did. Avery pulled out a small digital recorder. Arizona is a one-party consent state for recording phone calls. Lillian was very thorough about documenting threats. He pressed play. Marco's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. Listen, Lillian. Owen's got a good thing going with you, but families have rights. Jake's his son, and Laura's his wife legally speaking. They're entitled to consideration. It would be a shame if Owen's work situation become unstable. Laura closed her eyes. Jake stared at the recorder like it might explode. We're not asking for charity. We're asking for fairness. A little help now prevents bigger problems later. You understand what I'm saying? Avery stopped the playback. That's called extortion, a felony in all 50 states. That's taken out of context, Marco snapped. I was trying to help my family. Your family? Avery opened another folder. Mr. Lane, you've had 3 families in the past 6 years. Would you like me to read the restraining orders filed against you in Nevada? Or perhaps the fraud charges in Oregon that were dropped when you left the state? Jake's face went ashen. What fraud charges? Avery placed a thick police report on the table. Your stepfather convinced the widow of a casino owner that her late husband had promised to help Marco's stepson, a boy he'd never met. He forged documents claiming the deceased had agreed to pay for college tuition. That's not true, Jake said, but his voice lacked conviction. The pattern is identical, Avery continued. Target recent widows or widowers with substantial assets. Introduce an estranged family member with a claim. Forge documents to support the claim. Apply pressure through emotional manipulation and veiled threats. He pulled out another recording device. This is from 8 months ago. Marco calling Lillian after she'd been diagnosed with cancer. Marco's voice again. I heard about your diagnosis. Terrible news. Makes you think about legacy, doesn't it? about making sure the right people are taken care of before it's too late. Laura stood abruptly. I can't listen to this. Sit down, Marco hissed. No! She turned to face him. I won't be part of this anymore. Owen, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Jake looked between his mother and Marco, confusion replacing anger. Mom? He's not who he said he was, Laura whispered. None of this is what he said it would be. Marco's composure finally cracked. You ungrateful after everything I've done for you? For him? Everything you've done, Laura's voice rose. You've made us criminals. You've turned my son against his father with lies. Avery closed the ledger with a soft thud. Gentlemen, ladies, I believe we've heard enough evidence. The no contest clause in Miss Hart's will is now in effect. Any further legal challenges will result in the complete forfeiture of any potential claims and potential criminal prosecution for fraud and extortion. The mediator looked up from his notes. Mr. Lane, do you wish to withdraw your claims? Marco's lawyer, a thin man who'd been silent throughout the proceedings, leaned over and whispered urgently in his ear. Marco's face went red, then pale. We need time to consult, the lawyer said weakly. You have until 5 o'clock today, Avery replied. After that, we file criminal charges. The morning sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the kitchen where I sat with a cup of coffee, reviewing the scanned documents Avery had sent me. The atmosphere felt tense, thick with unspoken words and unresolved conflicts. My phone buzzed, and I glanced at the screen, an email notification from Avery. Subject, Notice of No Contest Clause Activation. I opened it and read through the details. Avery had formally submitted a notice to Jake and Laura's attorney activating the no contest clause in Lillian's will. This meant that any challenge they made to the will would result in them forfeiting any potential inheritance. It was a bold move, but one that needed to be made. Just then, the doorbell rang. My heart raced as I glanced at the clock. It was still early, too early for a friendly visit. I opened the door to find Avery standing there, his expression serious. Good morning, Owen, he said as he stepped inside. I wanted to catch you before they do. Who? Jake and Laura? Yes, I've heard they're planning to contest the will. Their attorney is likely briefing them on their options, but they don't have any grounds to stand on. I nodded, trying to absorb the news. What if they show up unannounced? They might. Be prepared. I've filed for a restraining order given their past behavior. It should provide you some peace of mind. Laura's voice drifted in from the living room, barely audible. Owen, we need to talk. I felt my pulse quicken. Avery, I can't go through this again. I know. He placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Remember, you have the upper hand now. They can't threaten your safety without consequences. As I moved to the living room, I found Laura standing beside Jake, who looked angrier than I'd ever seen him. You have no right to keep our family apart, he spat. Family? I echoed, incredulous. You left me. You and your mother made that choice. Laura stepped forward. Things were different then, Owen. We were desperate. Desperate enough to abandon your own son? I challenged, my voice rising. Jake clenched his fists. You don't get to act like the victim here. You're the one who kept us away. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all the past years pressing against my chest. I'm not the one who walked out. Your mother and you chose to leave. Avery interjected, his tone calm but firm. Let's stick to the matter at hand. The will is legally binding, and the no contest clause is in effect. If you continue down this path, you'll jeopardize any claim you think you have. Jake scoffed. We're not afraid of your threats. You should be, Avery replied, his voice gaining an edge. This isn't a game. If you file a claim, you'll lose everything. As the tension in the room escalated, I saw Laura's resolve begin to waver. She exchanged glances with Jake, who remained defiant. You're making a mistake, Jake said, his voice low and threatening. We won't back down. I met his gaze, holding my ground. You don't know what you're up against. Just as they began to leave, Marco stepped into the doorway, leaning in with a smug look. "This isn't over, Owen. I know how to play this game." I watched as they left, a mix of exhaustion and determination coursing through me. Avery turned to me, his expression serious. "We need to prepare for anything. They'll be back." The afternoon light cast long shadows through the windows as I paced the living room, checking the security cameras I had installed after Lillian's warnings. Each camera provided a sense of safety, a buffer against the chaos that had invaded my life. Mrs. Green stood nearby, organizing the kitchen as she always did. Her presence was a comfort, grounding me in the familiar routines we had established over the years. "You're doing the right thing, Owen," she said, her voice steady. "You've fought hard for what you have." "I just want to protect it," I replied, glancing at the monitors. "I don't want to feel vulnerable in my own home." Zoe was on the phone, coordinating security for the evening. "I've set up a patrol for tonight," she said, sounding focused. "They'll do drive-bys every hour, and I'll keep the media at bay. Just stay calm, Owen. We've got this under control." As I prepared for the potential confrontation, I thought back to Lillian's words about safety and trust. She had built a life rooted in resilience, and I would honor her legacy by standing my ground. "Have you spoken to Avery?" Mrs. Green asked. "Not since this morning. He's preparing for any possible fallout. I just hope it doesn't come to that." Zoe hung up the phone and walked over. "I can stay if you need me, just to provide an extra set of eyes." I appreciated her offer. "Thank you, but I think I need to handle this myself. I need to show them that I won't back down." Mrs. Green nodded in agreement. "You're not just defending your home, Owen, you're defending your future." Just then, headlights swept across the living room as a car pulled into the driveway. My heart raced as I moved toward the window, peering through the curtain. I could see Jake and Laura getting out of the car, Marco lurking in the background, a shadowy figure. "This is it," I said, my voice low. "They've come back." Mrs. Green moved to my side. "Stay calm. Remember what Lillian taught you. You have the advantage now." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle around me. I'm ready. As they approached the front door, I steadied myself, recalling Lillian's unwavering strength. I would not let them intimidate me. I would stand firm, prepared to protect everything I had worked for. I opened the door but kept my body in the frame, blocking their entry. Jake stood closest, his jaw set in that stubborn line I remembered from his teenage years. Laura hung back, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. Marco lurked behind them like a shadow that had learned to walk. "We need to talk," Jake said, his voice harder than I'd ever heard it. "We talked yesterday, at mediation, with lawyers present." I kept my tone level, my hands visible and calm. That's how adults handle business. Jake stepped closer. "This isn't business. This is family." "Family doesn't abandon each other when things get hard," I replied. "Family doesn't forge documents. Family doesn't threaten people with cancer." Marco pushed forward. "You think you've won something? You think hiding behind lawyers makes you a man? I think documentation makes me prepared." I gestured to the small camera mounted by the doorframe. "Everything we're saying right now is being recorded. Just like Lillian taught me, audit everything." Jake's eyes flashed. "She poisoned you against us, made you think you were better than your own blood. She gave me work when I couldn't work. She gave me dignity when I felt worthless. She showed up every day for 15 years while you sent exactly 0 phone calls, 0 letters, 0 birthday cards." My voice stayed steady, but the words carried weight. "Blood isn't what makes family, Jake. Showing up is." Laura stepped forward, tears starting. "We made mistakes." "You made choices," I corrected, "and now you want to profit from the consequences of those choices." Marco's face reddened. "You owe us. We're his family, and you stole 15 years. "I stole nothing. I survived what you left behind." I looked directly at Jake. I have an offer, one time only. There's an education fund Lillian set up specifically for you. College, trade school, whatever you want to pursue. Full tuition, living expenses, books. The only conditions are no cash withdrawals, no third-party access, and you complete whatever program you start. Jake's expression flickered surprise, then suspicion. What's the catch? No catch, just boundaries. You want to build a relationship? We build it slowly, with respect, without Marco's involvement. You want the money and nothing else, then we have nothing else to discuss. Marco grabbed Jake's arm. Don't listen to him. He's trying to control you, just like she did. Jake shook him off. Let me think. There's nothing to think about, Marco snapped. We came here for what's ours. What's yours, I interrupted, is what you earn, what you build, what you maintain through your own effort. I looked at each of them in turn. Lillian left me a business, not a lottery ticket. I worked 70-hour weeks to keep it running. I earned this inheritance through 15 years of showing up. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Zoe had kept her promise about security patrols. You called the cops on your own son? Jake asked, incredulous. I called them on people who were trespassing after making threats. I stepped back slightly. The restraining order was filed this afternoon. You have 5 minutes to leave the property before they arrive. Laura grabbed Jake's hand. Come on, this isn't worth it. Marco's eyes went cold. You think this is over? You think we can't make your life difficult? I think you've already tried that for 15 years, and I'm still here. I met his stare without flinching. I think Lillian prepared me for exactly this conversation. And I think you underestimate what happens when someone finally stops being afraid of you. The sirens were closer now. Jake looked between his mother and Marco, then back at me. The education fund, he said quietly. Is it real? It's real. Managed by Avery Cole. Available whenever you're ready to use it for its intended purpose. Jake nodded once, then turned away. Laura followed, but Marco lingered. This isn't finished, he said. Yes, it is. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. Through the window, I watched them drive away as the patrol car turned into my driveway. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room of the Lillian Hart Foundation for Family Stability, watching our first group of participants receive their certificates. 23 people who had navigated family estrangement, financial crisis, or the death of a primary caregiver. 23 people who had learned, like I had, that family is built through consistent care, not blood relations. Hart Hospitality had expanded to include a third property, a restored inn in Bar Harbor that attracted guests who valued authenticity over luxury. Jonah ran the day-to-day operations with the kind of steady competence Lillian would have appreciated. Zoe had developed a marketing strategy that told stories rather than sold rooms. Mrs. Green had trained 3 new housekeepers in the art of making guests feel genuinely welcome. The business thrived not because I inherited it, but because I understood what Lillian had been building. Relationships based on trust, service based on excellence, growth based on sustainability rather than extraction. My phone buzzed during the ceremony. Email notification. The sender made me pause. J. Bennett, student at portlandcc.edu. Mr.
Brooks, the message began. I've been thinking about the education fund you mentioned. I'm enrolled at Portland Community College, studying business administration. I've completed my first semester with a 3.4 GPA. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I wanted you to know I'm using the opportunity you provided. Maybe someday we can have a conversation that isn't about money or lawyers or the past. Maybe we can just be 2 people figuring out how to move forward. Jake. I read it twice, then forwarded it to Avery with a note. Please coordinate with the fund administrator. Full support for his education. Mrs. Green appeared at my elbow. Good news? Complicated news, I said, but the kind of complicated that might lead somewhere good. She smiled. Miss Lillian always said the best investments take time to mature. Through the foundation, I'd met dozens of people rebuilding their lives after loss, abandonment, or betrayal. Some found reconciliation with estranged family members. Others, like me, learned to create new families from the people who consistently showed up. Each path was different, but the common thread was clear. Healing happens when you stop waiting for other people to change and start building the life you can control. The ceremony ended with applause and the kind of tears that come with genuine accomplishment. As participants filed out, many stopped to shake my hand or share brief stories about their progress. "Thank you for showing us it's possible," said Maria, a grandmother who'd been raising her daughter's children after addiction destroyed their family. "You proved that starting over isn't giving up." After everyone left, I sat alone in the conference room, looking at the framed photo on the wall. Lillian in her work gloves, standing beside the restored Victorian house, clipboard in hand, satisfied smile on her face. "We did it," I said to her image. "We built something that lasts." My phone buzzed again, this time a text from an unknown number. "Saw the foundation article in the paper. Proud of what you've built. L." Laura. After 6 months of silence, a simple acknowledgement. I didn't respond immediately. Some conversations require time to ripen, like Lillian's investments. But for the first time in 16 years, the possibility of forgiveness felt less like surrender and more like strength. Outside, the Portland skyline caught the afternoon light. Somewhere in that city, Jake was attending classes, building skills, creating a future that didn't depend on what other people owed him. Somewhere, Laura was learning to live without Marco's schemes and manipulations. And here, in a conference room that bore Lillian's name, 23 people had learned what I'd learned, that family is not about who shares your blood, but about who shares your values. Who shows up when showing up is hard? Who builds with you instead of taking from you? The inheritance Lillian left me wasn't just money or property. It was the knowledge that love is a verb, not a feeling. That trust is earned through consistency, not demanded through biology. That the best legacy you can leave is not what you accumulate, but what you enable others to build for themselves. I locked the conference room and walked to my car, ready to go home to the house that work had built, in the life that showing up had earned. Some stories end with reunions, some end with revenge. This one ends with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the people who matter most are the ones who choose to stay, and the greatest wealth is the ability to help others discover their own strength. This journey revealed that the most precious inheritance isn't assets, it's assurance that you matter to someone. Like many betrayal stories across generations, mine began with rejection. But unlike typical grandpa stories about conquering enemies, this one is about enemies conquering themselves through their own poor choices. God sends the right people at precisely the right moments, often through the wrong circumstances. Lillian entered my story through tragedy, but stayed through choice. She became God's living proof that family is about commitment, not chromosomes. When betrayal stories devastate us, we question God's protection. Yet God uses every betrayal to redirect us toward people who deserve our trust. The grandpa stories I'll someday share won't celebrate the millions I inherited. They'll commemorate the woman who made me feel like a millionaire when I had nothing. These won't be conventional grandpa stories about athletic victories. They'll be about character victories, about discovering that God's best gifts come through people who love you at your worst. Within every collection of betrayal stories lies an invitation to choose grace over grudges. God transforms our deepest hurts into our highest callings. Through my foundation, countless betrayal stories are being rewritten as breakthrough stories, demonstrating that God specializes in turning mess into message. Family is built through daily decisions to stay committed. That's the treasure worth preserving in tomorrow's grandpa stories. How have betrayal stories in your past prepared you for better relationships in your present? Have you witnessed God using rejection as redirection towards something better? Share your story. Someone needs to hear how God can transform their pain into purpose. Thanks for watching the video.